Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Savepoint Stories, my podcast where we talk about our relationships with video games and share the experiences and stories of our personal connections with games and that leave lasting impressions on our lives. I'm your host, Kurosh, and what we do is, as I've mentioned in our prior episodes in the season, with the season, my episode 0, is I like to bring a guest every episode and bring him on, and it's a fun way to have a conversation about things, but also to see it from another person's perspective. And today I'm very fortunate to bring a tried and true podcast friend. We've gone through many a journey together. I bring you Derick McDuff from Underrated Movie Podcast. Derick, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I've had you on a guest a number of times, and I'm glad to be on the other side of it.
Yeah, the roles reversed a little bit, you know? You've had me on a wide variety of your shows, and it kept rubbing me the wrong way. I'm like, I don't have a show yet for him to be on, and here we are. But for the viewers that listen and are watching, some of the funny, we have a mutual friend, JPG, and at WonderCon one year, I had a panel, and he introduced us after that panel, and I remember we were chatting a bit. And I remember in that situation, you've told this story. You were telling me about all of your different podcasts and stuff you're doing. He's like, I'm looking for someone to do a Morbius episode. And I was like, someone like Morbius? Hell yeah, I want to talk about Morbius. Not that you liked it, but like that you were doing an episode. It was the April Fool's episode, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, for my Marvel podcast. I was like, all right, I was like, I'm gonna find somebody at this convention who's gonna talk about Morbius. Little did I know, I would find such a great collaborator going forwd.
Yeah, and the rest was history. We've been on a few, so thank you again for coming on today's episode. You do your movie podcast. Is there anything else that you want to tell the fans about yourself?
Yeah. So Underrated Movie Podcast is the main one. I also do Infinity Stones and Dragon Bones, which was the one we were just talking about. And then I also do the Midnight Film Society. That's where me and my buddy Damien do like kind of a conversational podcast. You can also find my writing on places like, I write for Watch Mojo. So, if you see some of those lists on YouTube or wherever, good chance you might have heard one of mine. But yeah, main thing is Underrated Movie Podcast.
And for video watchers, you'll notice this, but he's also a Comic-Con panelist. So we're among fame here. But okay, let's get right into it. What game have you picked for today's episode, and why does it? We'll get into why. But what game have you picked for us today?
So the game that I picked is The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask.
Beautiful game. I'm going to do a brief overview of what this game is for those that may not know. The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask is an action-adventure game developed and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo 64, coming out in North America, in October 26, 2000. It was the second Legend of Zelda game to use 3D graphics following Ocarina of Time in 1998. The story of this game takes place months after Ocarina of Time. Link arrives in a parallel world, Termina, and becomes embroiled in a quest to prevent the moon from crashing in 3 days. The game introduces a gameplay concept revolving around perpetual repeating 3-day cycle and use of various masks that transform Link in different forms. And as you progress through the game, you learn a variety of different melodies using the ocarina in the tried and true Legend of Zelda fashion. A notable thing also about Majora's Mask is it required the expansion pack add-on for the Nintendo 64, which provided the additional memory for more refined graphics and greater capacity in generating on-screen characters. Tell us, Derick, why does this game mean so much to you?
Yeah, I mean, this was a game that I played, I played my whole life. It's one of those, like, really, you look back at your life and the things that kind of, like, are, like, these defining pieces of fiction, whether it be a book or a movie or whatever it might be. And for me, this is definitely one of those pieces of fiction. And, among all of video games, I'd say this is the number one piece of that. Because I think it really captures, like a lot of Zelda games have this kind of like hopeful melancholiness, for lack of a better term, where it's like, yeah, the moon is falling, it's this impending doom, it's this natural disaster, and you have to avoid it. And it's tough. It's like a tough game, especially I think it's a lot tougher than Ocarina of Time. And playing it as a kid, I remember like this game came out when I was like 10, and I had a tough time with it. I had to get the guide and everything, um, but it really captures, and I think something that rings true with me is, I see I think the world is kind of a bittersweet place, and it is full of all this impending doom and everything. But there is always like a hope. You can always like try and avert that disaster. Especially, I think some of us are kind of feeling that right now in the world. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but all you can do is kind of like try and do your best to like stop this, And there's a happy ending that you can get to. And what I think sets this game apart amongst Zelda games, amongst so many games, is how personal it is with these characters. You develop these bonds with these NPCs because of the 3-day cycle in a way that you really would not be able to do in most video games. Most NPCs is like, oh, they send you on a quest and whatever. But like, for example, just like the way you get so invested in the romance and the story of like Cafe and Anju.
Yeah.
Dude, because you have to do so much stuff, and you're really, really trying. You want to see them get together, and when they do at the end, it's like, oh, you've done it, So yeah, very, very powerful game in my history.
That's amazing. Yeah, I definitely share some of that sentiment with you in that it was introduced to me at an early age of my life. And I'm curious for you, can you speak a little bit about that introduction? Like, can you set the scene? How did you first learn about this game, take it on? Like, what was that like, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so, Zelda is now my favorite game series of all time, like, bar none. Pokemon maybe is the only thing that's close. But I got introduced to Zelda. I was 8 when Ocarina of Time comes out, so I'm 10 when Majora's Mask comes out. And so I'm right at the age where that was really my first Zelda. I didn't play any of the older Super Nintendo or Nintendo ones or Game Boy ones until later on. But I was introduced to Zelda for Ocarina of Time, which is, I think, an incredible starting point to get into that series. And then I was like, okay, a couple of years go by, I play Ocarina of Time, I'm obsessed with it, all my friends talk about it all the time at recess and stuff like that. We're like, oh yeah, this game, like, how far are you? Have you beaten Ganondorf yet? And then they're like, guess what? They're making a new one. And it's going to be set in this completely other place. There's this whole, I don't remember if I did have Nintendo Power at this point. I know I had it at some point in my life, or if it was just like hearsay around like the kids talking about it. But it was like, okay, this is a Zelda game that's even kind of crazier than the first one. And I'm like, what? Like, it's crazier than Ocarina of Time. And I go into it and I play it, and I had like the gold cartridge. Like, I got this game very quickly. And I remember like liking it a lot when I was a kid, but I still liked Ocarina of Time a little bit better. But over the years, and I still love Ocarina, I think that perspective has flipped a little bit, where I'm like, I now appreciate Majora's Mask so much more for all of the things that it did. Like, Ocarina absolutely set the groundwork, but it's like Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, where it's like, you can't have Empire Strikes Back without Star Wars, and Star Wars is obviously a masterpiece, incredible, so is Ocarina of Time. But it's all the groundwork was set, and then Majora's Mask is like, all right, we're going to the next level that you didn't even think was possible before.
Wow. So that's also an interesting thing. So for you, that appreciation for this game wasn't on the initial onset fully yet. Like, it grew, it was all like a fine wine in a way of like, over the years, you just grew to love it even more. Do you revisit it at all?
I do. Yeah. I've revisited it a couple times. Most recently, I just went back through, and I rarely 100% games, but I have like the Switch subscription with the expansion pass, I guess it's called, where you have all the
the online Nintendo online service.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, one of the first things I did was I'm gonna replay Majora's Mask, because that game is just incredible. And I went through, and I had never 100%ed it before. I'd gotten all the masks and stuff, but I was like, because that game is very, very side quest heavy. There is a lot to do to just get like all the heart containers and the masks and talk to all the different characters. And I went through and 100%ed it. And the last time I think I had beaten the game was maybe like 10, maybe a little bit longer years ago, when I had made a bet with my brothers that I could beat the game in a day without using any guides or anything. and I actually recorded myself doing it and edited it into like a little documentary that I put up on YouTube at the time. You can still
No
find
way.
if you Google Man versus Mask on YouTube, it might come up. You might see a college age Derick going through trying to beat Majora's Mask in a day. I had a lot of fun with that.
Oh my god, I have to find this video and put it in the show. That's so amazing. So you were able to do it. Was anything on the line with that bet?
Oh yeah, I had bet my brothers. One of them I had bet $5. One I had bet $1. So, and it came down to the wire. I won't spoil it in the documentary, but like, and I will say I did do it, but it was close. It was pretty fucking close.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And so with this game too, I'm also kind of curious, just knowing the game. There's so many side quests, and there's a set amount of masks. 100%ing this game means collecting all the masks. That's the definition of 100%.
So yeah, I didn't 100% it when I did the bet. I just beat the game. But yeah, 100%ing it means you have to get all the masks, you have to get all the heart pieces, and there's like a bunch of other like smaller things that you can do as well. And I will say, going through it this most recent time, I was like, this game is a lot easier when I'm actually like getting the masks and the heart pieces, because like I did not have a lot of health when I did that back in like 2011 or whatever it was. But yeah, there's a lot to do, and some of it's like really cool, and like because you have that bomber. People don't know you have like a bomber's notebook thing where it's like tells you like where every character is going to be at like different, and you like can make everyone happy. And there's a thing where you can like. That's the thing too. You have to make every single character happy in the game, and some of them a lot of them will give you masks, some of them will give you heart pieces, some of them will just like it's part of their thing is making them happy leads to another person's quest. That's another thing you have to do, and then there's also like smaller miscellaneous stuff like getting the bow and arrow. So you have to, or like the biggest bow and arrow upgrade. So you have to like go to like the shooting gallery and shoot. And I did cheese it a little bit with some of those like the mini games, because some of the mini games are really tedious, and I did like okay, do save states, so like let me start over the mini game so I don't have to like go through and do a whole half hour of like resetting the game and gameplay. So I did cheese it a little bit, but I still made sure to like beat all the mini games legit. But yeah,
this game also is interesting in that there's so much, like you said. Ocarina was a big shift in like the maturity of storytelling on these platforms, on N64, 3D platforms, Mario. There's a novelty to it and stuff. And so I think with Majora's Mask, there were so many nuanced stories, and it kind of covered a more morbid, dreary, mature story beats, and just a variety of them. Even the romance story you mentioned. Was there any specific moment in this game that just really has stuck with you, or that you look back on very fondly?
Yeah, I think, I brought it up before, but the whole Cafe and Anju storyline, because...
Could you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so for those who aren't aware, it's basically this side quest that you don't even have to do to beat the game. It's completely optional. And I didn't beat it when I did my 24-hour run, but I always try to do it, and I'll do it multiple times, just because I like doing it so much, even if I'm doing something else in the story. And basically, you have these two lovers who are about to get married. They're going to be married on the day of the carnival, which is, the day the moon is going to fall and obliterate everybody. And you kind of, like, one of them has been cursed, Cafe, the guy, to basically, like, be a little kid. And so, and his wedding mask has also been stolen. And Anju thinks like she's not sure why he left them. So you have to kind of go back and forth and interact between the two of them. You have to be at very specific places at specific times to get something from one of them, bring it to the other one, go to the other one, go here, like, and you go to this place, go to this place, go, and like in the middle of the night and meet her in like a laundry room, and then you find like this back alley and you talk to like this guy who's like runs this like shady like what do you call it, like secondhand, like curiosity shop, it's called in the game, like a black market thing. Yeah. He tells you, he's like, okay, yeah, he found the thief, and then you gotta like, it builds to this like intense finale where you have to like get through this like little mini dungeon that the thief has made, and it's really tough, like, and then you fail, you have to start the whole thing over, do the whole 3-day cycle again. And then it ends with like the two of them in this incredible moment where the moon is about to fall. You're waiting in the room with Anju. for waiting for Cafe to show up because you've just completed the thing, and you can just warp there because you're Link, but he has to run across all of Termina to get back there, and you're just waiting and waiting. The moon's coming. You're like, there's like 3 minutes left. Is this guy gonna show up? And then finally he does, and they're reunited, and they give each other the masks, and it's just this beautiful moment of love. And they're like, we know we're about to be obliterated. The moon is gonna smash us, but we're here together. We've professed our love for each other, and it's so profound and moving. And I try to do it every single time. And then if you do it and then you beat the game, then you get this little wedding cutscene too. And
really?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's like an actual, because there's in the credits, there's scenes that will show up like depending on which side quests you've done. So if you beat the credits with doing no side quests, it's very sparse credits, but you get to see all the people you've helped through the course of the adventure in the third day, or in the fourth dawn of the new day. Which is really, and it has tendrils and like all these other storylines. It's there's like the whole thing about like people think that Cafe ran away to the ranch to be to be with Cremia, and who's also Andrew's best friend. So there's like this implied like love triangle. So and then there like the mom is like hires you as like an investigator. So like you get masks from all these different people, and it kind of touches everything in the story. And me being just like the hopeless romantic I am, I love it so much.
Yeah, no, it's I knew a lot of the story beats. I never knew the full story, so that was partially for me to also be like, tell me, Derek, what occurred. But would you say, just out of curiosity, has this game had any impacts on you outside of the game itself, like in other parts of your life in any way?
I think it has. I think honestly, I'm a writer as well, and I think that it's kind of influenced the way that I tell stories. That I want to have this rich world building with all these really strong characters, and this kind of that same way that I love the melancholy bittersweetness of it. That's a lot of the stuff that I write too. And I think that just as like a writer, as an artist, as a creative person, this is something that really sticks with me.
Okay. Yeah. I find that a lot of the story beats, they hit a lot of, there's the comedy elements, there's the more serious elements and everything. I'm just very curious also of like, has your feelings on like the game as a whole evolved or changed in any which way? Like, I know you feel very strongly like this game has meant so much to you, but like now do you reflect back on it even more, or does it continue to evolve to this day, or do you feel pretty solid about where you are with it now?
Yeah, I think it's definitely evolved, and like I mentioned, I liked it at the time, but my love of it has grown even more over the years. And I think that's a big part of the reason is because I have matured. When you're 10, you don't appreciate all these nuances and the subtlety of this storytelling that I do now that I'm like 35 or whatever. And I think that has grown over the years. This wasn't always my favorite Zelda. Now it's my favorite game just of all time, I would say.
Wow.
So I think, it really has grown in my appreciation because, especially when, I have an English degree now, and I'm able to like notice all these themes and motifs and stuff like that, and appreciate it on this much deeper level, being someone who is informed about story structure and stuff like that. And I'm always trying to improve my knowledge of that kind of stuff, so I always appreciate the game more and more. And I will say, on like a side note, is that's what I love so much about this, why this is like my favorite game, is because I think it does this shows you in the same way that like Watchmen does for graphic novels, or like Schindler's List does for movies. Like, certain things are like, these work because they are utilizing the medium to its fullest. This being a game where it's like, and obviously you could do Groundhog's Day or something like that. Like, that's a movie that exists that has a similar premise. But the fact that you can just go and interact with these people and realize, oh, if I go here, then I can do this thing. But for example, like I talked about the Cafe and Andrew storyline, if you choose to follow that storyline, you have to let this old woman get robbed on the first night, because then the thief won't be in the right place. So you have to like make decisions like that actively. And that's one thing I love about video games, is you actively have to be a participant in them in a way that so many other mediums are passive. And this one, requires you're so much more invested in these people's lives because you are talking to them, you're doing the things, you're making these choices, you're going to places, and that's like Ocarina of Time, incredible. You are interacting with and stuff, but that's a story you could probably tell in a different medium. You could tell it in a book and or a movie or whatever.
Potentially soon.
Yeah, exactly. But Majora's Mask, because it's so side quest heavy, because it's so much about going and talking to these characters, I don't think it would work nearly as well in another format.
No, that's an interesting point you bring up, and it makes me wonder. I have a couple questions. One, do you still play games actively?
Yeah, I'm a still like I still play a lot of games. Not as active as like when I was in high school and stuff, but
Sure.
a few times a week I would say for sure.
Okay. In that, in your gameplay, in what you find enjoyable now, do you find yourself chasing similar things from a game like Majora's Mask, or has your taste in game changed any which way, or as you've grown older, or over the years and experiences and everything?
Yeah, honestly, I think I still play a lot of the same stuff that I used to play back then. Majora's Mask, or like Zelda is still my favorite franchise. Pokemon, my second favorite franchise. Are both franchises from back then that I've stuck with. And obviously, there's new things that I will get into, but it's interesting because I think I started out one way. I started out being I love these single player games, and then in my teen years and stuff, I got more into multiplayer and stuff like Halo and stuff. And I mean, I'll still play multiplayer stuff, but now I've really really gone back home and been okay, I'm really into this single player experience, delving into this really interesting deep world. I'm really all on board. It's like that. I don't know if you've seen that meme where it's from Rogue One, and it's a man of your talents playing single player games. It's a peaceful life. That's me.
That's you.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting because in my head it was gonna go possibly you could go to the familiar, and I feel to your point of what you were saying of Legend of Zelda, the franchise as a whole has built such an eclectic universe, and world building is so rich, and there's so much to go back to. Every time they go back to it, it's familiar, but it's new. They've done the new changes with the Wind Waker in the GameCube era, and then you have Breath of the Wild. But then also, I was kind of curious if, and I want to follow up with this question of that narrative chase that you said that you got from Majora's Mask. You saw some depth there, and now you see games that do it so much more often and more commonly. There's a narrative genre, and then there's games that are way more cinematic, like the Uncharted's and the Last of Us and several other games like that. Does that change how you feel about these games, or is it in a direction you like to see as both a filmmaker, writer, and an enthusiast of the film genre as much as you are in the game space?
Yeah, I mean, I like those cinematic games. Those are cool. Those are fun. But I think for me, my favorite games are the ones that are a little more about exploring. They're a little less of a linear story. They're a little bit more of you can just go and do what you want to do, because those games are cool. But like I said, it's games are games because they do things that movies cannot do, and that's why I think The Last of Us was a really great adaptation. They were able to really adapt that into a TV show, a prestige show, very well, because it's already very much like that. It's you're playing through it, but you're not really making a lot of active choices in that game. You kind of have to do what you have to do. And there's the same, in Zelda, there is a story you have to follow, but you're also you can go and decide to get a bunch of masks, or you can go follow this quest. You can do all these different things. And I do
that player agency that you're talking about.
Yeah, or to put it another way, Pokemon, there is still the same storyline that you're going to do, all the Pokemon players are going to do, but the team that you build is going to be vastly different than anyone else's team,
Yeah, this is Derick's team.
Yeah, exactly.
And, okay, I see. So, in the point that you were saying about the masks, are there masks that? And this is kind of a bit of a nerdy question in the game. Are there any masks that you specifically are I always get these masks? No matter, I know not all of them are required, but do you go for any specific ones, or do you have a favorite one?
Yeah, I mean, the one that I is the one you get at the end of the Cafe and Anju quest, the wedding mask is really cool. The one that I really like a lot is the bunny hood, like just on a
Oh,
utilitarian level, the bunny hood, which makes you go like 1.5 speed, is very useful. It's very helpful. There's a couple other masks that are like ends of cool quests that I like a lot. Um, the what's it called, the Cremia's mask, the one, the cow one. I'm spacing on the name right now, but that one's cool just because I love that plot line. I mean, and I think the coolest ones though are the transformation masks, and those are part of the storyline. You have to get them.
right.
But I think my favorite mask is the Zora mask because it's cool. You get to be like an undead guitarist, like badass guy, and it's like they nerfed it a bit in the 3D remake, which one of the reasons I don't like the remake. But like you're just like swimming around, like shooting around, just jumping out of the water, shooting like your elbow boomerangs and stuff like that. It's really cool. So I think favorite might be Zora's mask. Although maybe though, so people may or may not know, if you get all of the masks and you go to the end of the game, you can trade them all in to get the Fierce Deity mask, which that thing rules so much. It's like almost like unfair. Like it makes the final battle which is kind of tough. Like even for a Zelda game, it's like a tough final battle against Majora. It is an absolute joke. Just like bam, bam, bam. But like seeing Link is just like this tall, awesome warrior with like this DNA sword, or like an ancient, like evil, like warrior, or like whatever you are. You can only use it in boss fights, but it is so rewarding. Just be like, see ya, choo choo choo, and you're like that. It's really cool to see.
I remember the first time I read the guide and I saw the artwork for that, what you look like as the Fierce Deity. I was like, this is Super Saiyan form for the Legend of Zelda world. Like this is when people would Google Super Saiyan 8. Like that's what it was for Link.
That's a good way to put it, honestly, because you are just so ridiculously OP.
Yeah, it's wild. I have a question too. Have you ever recommended this game to anyone?
Oh, all the time. I always tell people like play this game. It's interesting because people are like, well, I'm looking to get into Zelda. I don't recommend this one as one to start on, but if people are like, well, what's your favorite game? Usually I'll be like, I think a good starter one is either Breath of the Wild or Ocarina of Time, because I do think this game plays a lot better if you have previously played Ocarina of Time. I think it's a really perfect sequel, and it builds on all the stuff that game establishes, and that game really kind of teaches you how to play in a 3D Zelda world. Which might not be as necessary now that we've all been playing 3D games for 25 years. But at the time, it was like, okay, you kind of needed this. But this game doesn't assume like the first level, you're like you're right into it. It's not like the Great Deku Tree in Ocarina where it's like, all right, you're understanding the concepts. That's a great first level, but this one's like, no, you're right into it. So I really recommend this game, but I don't recommend it as a first Zelda game.
Gotcha. And then the other question I had, we've spoken about all the masks, the side quests, Link himself, the Zelda universe, but we haven't talking about the little guy that steals the Majora's mask. I was very curious what you think of Skull Kid and his weary ways and just his whole, because to me, I feel like there's a narrative in and of itself of just that character, let alone all these different other side characters. Have you do you have any thoughts, or do you have any things about points about Skull Kid?
Yeah, Skull Kid's really interesting because, and I think it's interesting we're saying Skull Kid and not Majora because they are two distinct entities, right? Skull Kid is wearing Majora's mask, and Skull Kid is like the villain, but he is a puppet ultimately, and not a puppet in the way that spoilers for a game that's like 20 years old now, that Zant was in Twilight Princess. He is like there, and it's interesting because Skull Kid's like a minor side character you can choose to interact with in Ocarina of Time, and he says hey, you're like that fairy boy, so it's the same Skull Kid that you met in Ocarina of Time, and he's like this really tragic figure who's essentially like a lonely kid who has and some of the mythology is kind of and I kind of appreciate it's kind of ambiguous or like, you know, wonky. It's like, is this a parallel world? Like, what's going on? Like, was the Skull Kid like actually like this ancient imp from all these legends, or what's going on with that? But he's just like this lonely guy who like has been cast out by his friends like either abandoned him or he's been cast out or whatever. And so he's very sad. He possibly at one point was a child who just got cursed and lost in the Lost Woods. And then he teams up with these two fairies who, by the way, also great. Like, I will say the improvement from Navi to Tattle over the games is one of the best companion improvements of all time.
I love that they made Navi was cool and that it was a utility. There was a utility and purpose, but that there was a genuine story between that. Like, oh, they split. You know, in this one, in Majora's Mask, I love that dynamic between the two, the one with Skull Kid and the one with you.
Yeah, it's really, and you build this relationship with Tattle over the course of the game. Like, starts off very antagonistic, becomes like really close to you at the end of the game, and they have a lot more personality in Navi, and they kind of like make fun of you if you like ask about like an enemy that had been in the first game and stuff. But with Skull Kid, it's just so interesting because you're watching this really tragic character who's bringing about like the end of the world, but they're just like this hurt person who's been literally possessed by like an ancient demon. And then when you have that like kind of final confrontation with them at the end of the game, and you see the mask just discard him as like a puppet that can be no longer used as mere garbage, and you just see him like limply fall to the ground. The mask like floats up in the moon. You're like, you've been spending the whole game like, screw Skull Kid. He's just been like just haranguing me at every turn. And then you find out that he is just almost as much as a victim as everyone else. And he's just this, this means to an end for this evil entity that just wants to just destroy everything.
Yeah, it's an all-consuming thing. And then that puppet, the mask seller warns you about all this stuff. There's just so many like elements to this. I'm curious too, in this world in Termina and Majora's Mask, and I know more so in that than I would say in the Legend of Zelda larger world. If they were ever to revisit this space or this game, or in any way, whether it be another story in the world or a remake or remaster or something, what if I know they've done the remakes and stuff in the past, but what can you describe what your dream version of that would be now?
That would be so cool, because honestly, I'm kind of on the train of just like, I love Hyrule. Let's stop going to Hyrule all the time. Let's go somewhere else. And I think Termina is such a fascinating setting. And I would really love a Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom style game where you're able to just explore Termina like that. You know, like you're able to just kind of go around and like, the same way that they made Hyrule so vast and interesting, do that, but with Termina, with like the 4 pieces of Termina or whatever. Have Clock Town in the middle, have Link be able to explore in these new and interesting ways. I would love to revisit it in that just kind of modern context.
Imagine instead of all the quantity of shrines is the quantity of masks in the game.
That would be awesome.
And all the story, to me, it's like the masks would be the final reward. But to your point of, this game is so much about all the different stories and all the personal bits and all those different stories. I like your version of this. We need to get Nintendo on the line.
Right, let's gonna do it. All right, Termina, let's go. We need to go back.
Round 2, return trip. I do want to get close to a closing point. Do you have any like closing or final things to say about your experience in history and with Majora's Mask and why it means so much to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've talked about a lot of the stuff that makes this game so great, but it's a game that I can constantly go back to, and I think that it's a game that where its predecessor was arguably like one of the most perfect games that had ever been made, and then they were like, okay, let's just improve on basically every single aspect of that. You talked about with the expansion, and I'm actually, right now replaying Majora's or Ocarina of Time on the emulator, the Switch.
Oh, no way!
And it's really cool because it's like that's the game I probably replayed the most in my life. But after having so recently replayed Majora's Mask, I'm like, oh, I've noticed like the graphical improvements. They're like pretty impressive. But also from that storytelling aspect, from that whole thing of like, oh, like we're doing something new and different now that you can't do in another game is really impressive. And like I said, with like I think that the best Zelda games are kind of usually the ones where it's not Ganondorf. There's no Ganondorf. There's no Zelda, and obviously Zelda shows up for a second here, but and they're not in Hyrule. I think that another game that from the Zelda series that I love so much is Link's Awakening, which is a follow up to Link to the Past, and that's jettisons all of the Zelda stuff because those conventions are cool. They're there for a reason. I love them, but when you break free from these conventions and you're really able to just kind of like tell this story about grief and longing and all of these different emotions. Like I think this game is so heavy with emotions, and that's why there's so many theories on the internet. Like it's actually like a metaphor for the four stages of grief. Like after somebody dies and Link is actually dead, and like I don't really subscribe to any of those, but there's a reason that people think that kind of stuff because it's all in the game, and I think that the game is ultimately really about just I know how precious time is, and how it slips through our fingers and Link gets caught in this circle, and you see, that, he can make these changes and try and do all this stuff with the little time that he has. And I think that's an important thing. It's something that I think about a lot. And honestly, it's a game that I think really, really anybody would enjoy.
Thank you, Derick. I appreciate you for sharing that final thought. There's so much there to really get into, and I wholeheartedly agree with you on like all fronts that it does so many amazing things in all the ways you described. I think this brings us to the close of our show. I want to just once again thank you for being a part of the show. One thing I do want to kind of say is I'm trying to frame this around seasons, and I don't quite know yet what my themes are for future seasons, but the theme for me, it's a personal reason. The theme for me is a very personal reason, and it's the people I wanted to get, the folks that I could have be guests, have a meaning to me and in a big way, and like the folks that have been in different parts of my creative journey, and you've been one of the ones that were front and center in that, and so I wanted you to be a part of season one, and like that's my theming for season one. It's like my reasons and what I wanted to bring out. So thank you again for being a part of it.
Well, thank you for having me. I feel very honored, especially for that heartfelt, that heartfelt speech. And I'm happy to be here. We've had some great collaborations. Like you mentioned, Comic-Con, when that Comic-Con I was at, you were up on that stage with me. We killed it. That was a great panel.
We shared the stage. Your panel was amazing about underrated films, and I hope to I think many people are looking forward to, and myself included, you and your future stuff. Can you tell us if there's anything upcoming that you'd like to plug, or any just your personal socials? This is the window to do it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Underrated Movie Podcast on all of the socials, Instagram, all that stuff. You just look up Derick McDuff. Derick's Photos is my personal Instagram. But you can find me a lot of places. Underratedmoviepodcast.com will pretty much give you a link to anything you want to do. I'm not sure when this is dropping exactly, but I've got some episodes in the pipeline for Underrated. I've got an episode on Spice World coming out with our mutual friend JPG's wife Alex is going to be talking about Spice World.
Alex, amazing.
Yeah, so that's good. And then coming out soon, also probably out by the time this drops, talked about The Rundown with Mitch Narito from The Good Place. So a lot of fun. So yeah, got some good episodes coming up. So definitely check out and we've got a whole backlog of like 150 plus episodes. You were on a few of them. Speaking of 150, you were on the episode 150 talking about Mewtwo Strikes Back. So that was a good one. So definitely check out Underrated. Listen to Kurosh's episodes when you're over there.
Well, thank you, Derick. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, fans, for listening in on another episode of Savepoint Stories, my podcast where we talk about our relationships with games and the experiences and stories we connect with them and the personal connection that goes with it. Thank you again, and we'll call this the end of the show. Have a good night, everyone.